We're back again for another very good lunch program, and I thank you all for your time. I want to thank Rage Frameworks, our sponsor, for supporting us today. And we are going to have a conversation about AI in the enterprise, here and now. To do that, to manage that conversation for you, I want to welcome our two speakers to come up here and have a seat. They are Tom Davenport. Tom is a distinguished professor at Babson College and a lecturer and researcher at MIT. He's also a co-author of a new book called Only Humans Need Apply. And Vikram Mahidhar, who is the Senior Vice President of AI Solutions for Rage Frameworks. So Vikram and Tom are going to have a conversation about AI in the here and now, and I will leave them to it. So if we could start with the video, please.
Your business is ready to transform at an even faster pace. Your people want better resources, scalable tools, and improved insights to drive strategic change. You're interested in emerging AI technologies, but you don't think it can solve your problems because your IT architecture is too fragmented. You're packaged in homegrown applications, too rigid. Your data lives in separate legacy systems. It's unstructured. It's paper-based. Your data set is too large or too small, too varied, too inconsistent. Rage Frameworks Artificial Intelligence makes your impossible possible. Our perpetually flexible, scalable platform significantly extends the frontier of artificial intelligence and digital transformation. How? Rage AI is a no-code, fully model-driven platform powered by 20 intelligent and flexible engines that allow you to focus on solving your business problem and not get mired in incomprehensible technology details. In addition, Rage AI understands the subtle nuances of language, applying pioneering linguistics-based deep learning technology to get beyond the limitations of conventional natural language processing. What's more, Rage dynamically responds to signals from constantly changing internal and external environments, bridging the gap between your business transformation idea and its realization. And it's transparent, traceable. It's not a black box. In fact, your knowledge workers have the ability to see and adjust its behavior and how it determines insights. In just 30 to 90 days, you can be wielding the power of our solutions. Many of the world's leading companies trust Rage Frameworks. They're getting an edge, solving problems and uncovering opportunities faster than ever.
Great. Are you able to hear me? Excellent. Thank you all. And Tom, thank you for being here for the conversation. What Tom and I thought was we'll probably have a broader dialogue around AI here and now. Over the last day and a half, all of us have seen some really cutting-edge, almost magical technologies that are coming to life. And I've had several conversations over the last 24 hours or so, and many folks came to me and said, this is fantastic, but it seems like this is 5 years out. And obviously, that's the whole purpose of EmTech, or Emerging Technology Conference. But at the same time, many of you are here from large enterprises, and you are looking to use some of these technologies to solve the problems at hand today. And what Tom and I thought was we'll share some of our experiences here through this dialogue around what we see out there, what kinds of problems are being solved out there using certain AI technologies, if you may. And just to sort of put the definition around that, we saw lots of technologies in the last couple of days around computer vision. And does that mean that other AI technologies, be it around text or numeric data, is that matured? Is that already here and now? Be it natural language understanding, natural language generation, automation. Those are the kind of technologies that we will touch on today, if you may. So, Tom, the first question is, what's your view of adoption of these technologies today in the enterprise, and what kind of industries do you see transforming?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the lessons that I've learned being a relatively old guy is that even when supposedly there isn't a lot going on in AI, the smart companies really do it anyway. So about more than a decade ago, I wrote a piece which didn't get much attention on automated decision making and how it was becoming pervasive in insurance and financial services and so on. It was rule-based systems for the most part, not the smartest AI technologies out there, but a lot of companies got a lot of value, and I think that has really continued, as you say, a fair amount of action in the kind of text and speech-oriented area now as well. I was out a couple of weeks ago at the Salesforce.com Dreamforce conference with 177,000 of my best pals, and they are doing a little bit in computer vision with, looking at a customer's images on social media and kind of trying to figure out, are they interested in certain products and so on for Salesforce customers. But most of the work that they do has been looking at emails and understanding, is a customer being ignored, and is it time to compose a reply that eventually gets sent out by a person, but the creation, natural language generation, I guess you would call that. So I think there are a lot of different areas where that sort of thing is happening, and it's a little more prosaic, but it offers a lot of immediate business value, I think.
Very interesting. Very interesting. One of the things that you touched on is, reading customer interaction, if you may. And a case in point, one of the large logistics companies in the country came to us and said, we've spent millions of dollars over the last couple of years on getting our Net Promoter Score, which is the customer satisfaction score, up, and we've not been able to do that. We really want to understand what are the true reasons why our customers are contacting us, where is the dissatisfaction, we want to go from there. And we've tried various so-called NLP technologies, but we are not able to decipher it. And what we were sort of able to help them solve is really understand the context in those emails, or context in all the interaction that they are having with the customer. And as I was talking to you about the emerging technologies, and in particular, if we were to think about text as a data set, while it has evolved quite a bit from the rule standpoint and so on and so forth, but the context and reasoning are the two key parts that are still evolving, if you may. And that is kind of area that we are focusing on. Yeah,
I mean, I think one of the challenges has always been, as your video suggests, a lot of what you'd want to do is to combine transactional data with data from unstructured text and other kinds of relatively unstructured sources, and that has been a big challenge for a lot of organizations. I think it's one of the reasons why some people are getting a little disenchanted with Watson, because it's taking so long to sort of make these projects work. It's really, I think, the intersection of big data, small data, unstructured data, structured data, that is where a lot of companies are finding the sweet spot.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, most of the times when we go in, many companies, at least what I've observed, and I'd love to get your perspective. Now we operate in multiple different industries, so we have good sample set or good purview. What we've seen is that many companies are past the experimentation stage, where let's do a proof of concept, let's see if it works or not. They are getting into more scalable version of implementing these technologies, but they do bump against the fact that, it takes too long to train the machines. So probably the value that can be delivered from it may not be as much. Another example, I was talking to some of our colleagues here about build versus buy. There are lots of technologies available out there, APIs or open source technologies. So should we just build all these in-house? Those are two questions that organizations grapple with all the time. And what we see is that the training part, if you choose the right technologies, I think the training part can go down dramatically. We do it in weeks in terms of training the machines, if you may. And then the second part, when it comes to build versus buy, certainly the open source software and other technologies can get you as far. But at the end of the day, if you are not a technology company, if you don't have a deep technology bench, somewhere you will be left behind, and you will be left behind very quickly. So focus on, what we work with our customers on is that you focus on your business process, you focus on your domain. We will bring the software, wrap it around your business process, keep it flexible so that it can be adopted with the technology, but you continue to sort of get the advantage of the advancements that are out there. That's what we see. I don't know what your perspective is.
Yeah, no, I see the same thing. It's exciting to think about the fact that you can go out and get machine learning libraries from Google and Facebook and Microsoft and I think even Yahoo now. But frankly, I don't find virtually any large traditional companies doing that at all. And it's great that the software is free, but the expertise is a lot more expensive for that kind of work. And so, I think some of those big traditional companies will maybe acquire the skills to deal with open source libraries, but I don't think very many of them will. And I think that is probably one of the areas of kind of AI development and introduction that will grow only slowly, if at all.
No, absolutely, absolutely. In a couple of minutes, as you are sort of probably wrapping up or in the middle of your lunch, I'll engage the audience and invite some questions. So be ready with your questions. But while we get this conversation underway, Tom, what's the prognosis out there? Obviously, business leaders, technology leaders who are in the business, they're always wary of the fact that, is AI a hype or is it real? And if yes, how should I really plan around investing in AI? If you were to look at 2017 and the conversations that you are having, what do you see? Where do you see companies investing more broadly?
I think you're probably right, as you were suggesting earlier, that 2016 was sort of the last year of the pilot science project, and that 2017 is where companies really get serious about production applications of AI. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of uncertainty and lack of knowledge. I've been brought into 3 or 4 board of directors to talk about what does this mean for their particular company. Should we buy Watson? Should we get into open source? Are there any kind of intermediate strategies? And I think there are a lot of intermediate strategies. I published a piece today. I think it will be live in half an hour on Harvard Business Review about 7 ways to implement AI within organizations. And Watson is kind of the big, high-priced, in some ways high-risk option because they really want to sell it for transformative applications. Open source is the cheap software but expensive people option, but there are a lot of other alternatives out there that organizations can explore, I think. And so the big problem becomes, what's your entry point? Which technology makes sense? I think if you were somebody here, you'd have to say, well, it's fantastic that we have all these people doing deep learning, but what's the day-to-day implication of that for my organization? And there's not a whole lot of knowledge out there about it. As these big systems fragment, Watson is now not a system, it's 20 or so different APIs to choose from. I kiddingly suggested to the general manager of Watson that maybe the next application of Watson could be figuring out what API to use for what purpose, but they were not amused by that suggestion.
That's a that's a good point. Any questions from the audience? Please.
Michael from Switzerland.
We have a microphone if you can wait a few seconds. Yeah.
Michael from Switzerland. I've got a question to both of you, actually. When talking to customers about productive AI applications, one problem I encounter is a classical dilemma, because we use these applications to make decisions that are more intelligent than human decisions, which by definition means humans might not be able to understand why these decisions have been made. And there's been an interesting article in The Guardian recently about DeepMind working together with the NHS, asking the question, if a machine comes up with a therapy for a patient, who is going to sign the recipe? Who is going to take the responsibility? And I have met that question quite often in manufacturing, in different companies where people said, well, I have to take the responsibility for a decision I don't understand. Have you encountered this problem, and have you managed to overcome it? And if yes, how? That would be something I would be very interested in learning. Thank you.
Absolutely. I can speak to the absolutely practical application of it, which is, one of the biggest things around machine learning is building trust in the system. Because at the end of the day, you are talking about making big decisions using the intelligence and the output from the system. And tractability and traceability is very important. That is one of the things actually that we do. I'll give you an example. One of the big retailers came to us and said, look, we spent $1 billion on transportation, 35 distribution centers, tens of thousands of contracts, hundreds of thousands of invoices. We do think that we are being overbilled because these transporters' bills are more complicated than your telephone bills, if you may. And can you create something so that we know whether we are paying per the contract or not? Not only that, we are paying per our execution or not. And then it can inform our CFO how to take money, that $1 billion, per the actuals rather than the plan. So we train the machines, how to read the contracts, how to read the invoices, brought all that together, and now VP of Supply Chain has a dashboard that looks at, he looks at that every day and says, okay, here's where we are paying more, here's where we are paying less, but here's the problem. The moment they identify that, okay, we are paying this particular transporter $70,000 more, now somebody has to go and recover. And when they go to recover, the first question is, show it to me. Show me how did you arrive at the conclusion that we are paying you, you're paying us $70,000 more. And that's where what we have done is we've equipped the end user with the tractability. They can go down to the particular contract, they can go down to a particular invoice, and not just contract or invoice as a document, but to that particular line item, because these contracts are hundreds of pages of documents, to that particular line item, and show them the reverse calculation, if you may. That is extremely critical when you're applying machine learning, if you may. Tom?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the AI capabilities that will be rapidly taken up by companies will have to have that kind of transparency, trackability, whatever. I mean, the Salesforce one does. You can, if you see some customer has a high lead score, you can click on that lead score and find out why. I mean, in my experience, after you do that a few times and you see the logic, you don't really need to check anymore. But even in some of the companies that I've worked with, the programmatic buying companies for ads, even though buying a digital ad is a decision typically involving a few pennies, they say that if you have transparency, it's often difficult to create, but if you can do it, you get that trust and people are much more likely to use it. So I think it's a very, very important issue. I find AI researchers are not as interested in that that aspect of AI, but implementers care.
Any other questions? Okay. So, yeah, back there. Can somebody give them the mic?
Thank you, Vikram and Tom. Appreciate you taking this question. So where do you think that AI sits in the maturity curve? You know, I go back 10, 15 years ago, and ERP and CRMs were the board level talks. Let's do this because this is ROI. How should we have this conversation at that level today?
Yeah, well, you really have to disaggregate it, I think. You know, AI is a constellation of different technologies. As I was saying, rules are kind of out of fashion, but are pretty mature and are used in insurance and banking all around the world. Deep learning, not very mature at all in terms of commercial application. There are some technologies that are not terribly exciting, but are getting absorbed at a much faster rate, so-called robotic process automation. How many of you have heard of that robotic process automation idea? I mean, this is a very sophisticated technological crowd. It's, you know, it's a kind of a glorified screen scraping and scripted process system. No actual robots are involved. It involves servers, but it's being adopted quite quickly because you can use it for back office processes. It doesn't learn, it's not that smart, but it can do a lot of things that have historically required humans, and my guess is it will have more impact on the outsourcing industry than anything else. So that technology is mature, has rapid ROI, rapid implementation, and so you look at that versus deep learning, it's like it's a whole different set of categories, and I think you have to use different criteria to evaluate them.
Also, you know, I absolutely agree. One more way to think about this is not just AI technology or a set of technologies in isolation, but I would think about it as the entire business problem, because that's what your C-suite executive level folks would be interested in, that, you know, can you solve the entire business problem, and can this be transformative in certain way? Whether it is, you know, taking the outsourced pieces and making them completely automated, or launching a new product. If they're looking to launch a completely new line of product, can you use new suite of technologies and start from scratch rather than going back to the old way of this is how we have done things? And if I were to look at those two sets of problems, and we see this every single day, there are many, many problems in the enterprises, whether it is on buy side, which is customer facing, inside, which is your internal efficiency, internal processes, or on the sell side, on the supply side, broad spectrum of processes or business problems that can be solved using current state of AI. In some cases you need deep learning, but in many cases you really don't need deep learning. There are many mature technologies that can solve it.
And I think it's also important, I mean, to me, I'm not, I have no official arrangement with Rage, but I think if you watch that video, the thing that they do that most others don't do is they sort of pull the data together and integrate it with other systems in your organization. And it's not a sexy thing, and I've kidded Vikram about, you know, they're kind of the opposite of IBM. IBM is a lot of marketing and not much delivery thus far. There are a lot of delivery and a lot less marketing thus far. But it's hard. It's not sexy, but it's really important.
It is a hard problem. It is a hard problem, and it's case by case. Every business is different. Any other questions? So one topic that comes up, and I'm going to sort of pick it up from a question that was asked earlier, is that talent and people. Is AI replacing people? Are we automating, you know, all these jobs, and are these jobs going to go away? Will we all be out of work? And then the second point is, if not, what kinds of skill set are we looking at developing for the future. And Tom has done tremendous research around it. He's written a book called Humans Need Apply, or Only Humans Need
yeah.
Apply. Fascinating book. If you haven't read, I highly recommend it. But from your standpoint, Tom, what are the answers to those questions? Are we replacing human beings? And if not, how are we? What kind of skill sets are we looking for in the future?
Well, as you know, there are a whole range of answers to that question, ranging from the totally depressing. There is a book, by the way, called No Humans Need Apply, if you want that angle, or Rise of the Robots by Martin Ford, really a depressing book. To the cautiously optimistic, and I try to fall on the cautiously optimistic side. I mean, I'm sure economists for years were on the unthinkingly optimistic side, saying, oh, these jobs have left in the past, but they always come back. First of all, even though they may come back eventually, it's pretty miserable for the generation of people that loses their jobs. And secondly, as Larry Summers now admits, there's no God-given guarantee that the jobs will be created again. But I think for a couple of reasons we can be cautiously optimistic. One is that these changes happen quite slowly. Mm-hmm. And so how many of you would guess that there are substantially fewer bank tellers now than there were in 1980? Raise your hand if you think that's true. How many think there are more bank tellers now than 1980? One or two? How many think about the same? The latter group wins. About 500,000, and there were 500,000 in the United States in 1980. Did somebody say something over there? Now, we have about half again as many people in the United States as we had in 1980, so nobody would say this is a growth field, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics says it's kind of going to decline slowly going forward, but we have ATMs and we have online banking and robo-advisors, and all of these things haven't made that much of a dent yet. So it goes much more slowly than people realize. And two, I think there will be lots of jobs, God knows how many, working alongside these smart machines. So in our book, we tried to find examples of 5 different types of roles that humans can play, some working directly alongside machines and some kind of doing in-runs to do what they're not very good at. And we found examples of each of the 5 types. If you read that 47% of jobs are going to go away, first of all, note that there is no date by which these 47% are going to disappear, and that's in an Oxford study. 2, apparently only 35% of UK jobs are going to go away, so somehow they're 12% more immune from automation than we are over there. So I don't really buy that, and I think it's the fallacy of misplaced precision, but it does get a lot of sound bites in the media.
Well, practically, that's a fantastic point of view. Practically speaking, though, I have a very optimistic point of view. Optimistic point of view that, yes, all these technologies are going to replace transactional jobs, if you may. But what it is doing is it is creating so much more intelligence, which requires a lot more decision making, which requires a lot of negotiation, which requires a lot of diplomacy, and packaging that for the audiences and so on and so forth. And I see this on a day-to-day basis, on a practical basis, that there's need for a lot more negotiators, there's need for a lot more decision makers, there's need for a lot more people who can digest all this and say that, what does this mean? So practical example, I was giving an example earlier about that transportation case. We gave them all these insights, and we said, okay, you're going to save $40 million. And the VP of supply chain says, oh, but I don't have a process or organization to go and talk to all these transporters. This requires like 5 additional people. I need to go first get approval for 5 additional people. Then only the business case makes sense to go and recover all this money. right? We hear these things all the time because machine is going to give you intelligence. There are certain transactional decisions it is going to make. It is going to trigger certain automated processes. But end of the day, somebody talked about the case in the healthcare field that doctors are going to give you, or the machine is going to give the doctors an option. Here are 3 different ways you can solve this particular cancer or what have you. But end of the day, the doctors need to be more intelligent, more equipped, and in fact, they may need more arms and legs underneath them to go and make those decisions. So I have a very optimistic point of view, if you may.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of that is going to go on, and I define the field that I've been studying as not automation but augmentation, where it's kind of smart humans and smart machines working alongside each other. But if you're not a smart human, I'm a little more worried. And we have 3 million long-distance truck drivers in the United States, and I'm sure some of them will find ways to add value to autonomous trucking and maintaining those systems or improving them or fixing them, or maybe sitting in the cab and taking over when there's snow on the road or whatever. But I'm a little bit worried about the ones who can't really make that transition. And so at the same time, I think we can be cautiously optimistic about the possibilities. We also have to get our society ready for these kinds of changes and figure out what to do with the people who can't make that transition. And there are lots of alternatives related to universal basic incomes or whatever, but I think we also need to give people meaningful work to do, because that's a really important thing in many, many people's lives. So it won't be easy. The White House issued a report last week about this, which I was happy to see. I think Obama is tuned into the issue. Donald Trump, I doubt it. Probably not thinking much about automation right now. Hillary, I don't know. We know she knows what a server is, but beyond that, it's not so clear. So.
Interesting. Any questions? Any other questions from the audience? Going once, going twice? Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you, Tom, for being here. I appreciate all of you listening to us here and allowing us to share our experiences. Obviously, Lamborghini yesterday offered you to go and see their cars. I don't have any. But what we can offer to you is that if you want to see AI in action, stop by at the 6th floor, come see how we are putting AI in action. Thank you again.
I have a cool bicycle outside if anybody wants to see it.
But thank you all.